with Wilshire Oil Company. I was greasing the valves. A real heavy tar solution. Boy, it was hard to push into those valves on a distillery. We took 92 octane gasoline and rerun it for aviation gas. We made it a higher octane, yeah, for that. Well, anyway, on a Friday, I don't know when it was, I sent a card. I was supposed to keep my draft board in Denver. I had to keep them advised of what my new address was. So I sent them a postcard from California. And 3 days after I sent the postcard, the FBI showed up on the job and grabbed me. And they said, I said, what's all this? And they said, you were supposed to show up for draft. I said, I answered my draft, my summons already in Salt Lake City. And I got turned down on account of my ear. I showed up for that. They said, no, you got a second notice. I said, well, I'd already been turned down. I just ignored the second notice. And they said, oh, no, you don't. They took me and threw me in the Los Angeles County Jail on a Friday. And that jail was full of Jehovah's Witnesses, conscientious objectors. The whole jail was nothing but Jehovah's Witnesses.
I'm going to sit over here.
And I spent the weekend with those guys, waiting for the U.S. Commissioner to show up Monday morning.
Yeah.
So Emma brought Mama up there to the court while they took me to court because I'd been a delinquent, didn't show up for draft. And Mama was sitting down there crying, and I'm up there, and the judge started, oh, he was hungover. He'd been on a hell of a drunk Sunday night. And Monday morning, that commissioner was really hungover. And so it finally came out that I'd tried to join and been turned down. And the commissioner said, you mean you wanted to join the Army? And I said, I've tried 3 times and been turned down every time. He said, well, brother, you're in the Army now. So they sent me down to Fort MacArthur. I took a test down there and told them I was a radio operator. But I happened to mention that I drove truck at one time. And they needed radio operators badly in the Army. So they sent me to Kentucky as a truck driver. And when I got there, I tried to get in radio, and they said, no, you got to be here for 6 months before you can get on our radio. So I kept fooling around. I finally busted in there. I'd go down there with their holding classes, and I got to hitting the key, and they heard me running and saying, and I said, hey, you know this code? I said, oh, yeah, I know code. I'm a ham. They said, okay. So when they tested us to go overseas, the Army had trained a bunch of radio operators down in Fort Benning, Georgia. They trained a bunch of them, and they tested all of us. And then they gave us some questions that only a ham could answer, see? Those Army-trained guys couldn't answer these questions, and I was the only one in the whole outfit that could answer them. So they said, okay, you're in charge of this whole battalion on radio. But I stayed in B Company. And I went from a buck private to a T4, that's a sergeant, in one day, because I was a ham. And I remember old Lozens, that guy from California, I wouldn't let hams in the radio. No, in Army radio, hams had no business in Army radio. Because he'd been trained by the Army and he thought he should have been a T4. He was a T5.
Yeah.
Yeah. He said they shouldn't have him there. And all that thing about the antennas too. I always wanted to get my antenna as high as I could. These antennas, it was a whip antenna and it fit in a socket. We had a ceramic socket and the thing fit in there, and then the wire went from that to the set. So I wanted to get it as high as possible. In the Battle of the Bulge, we were in the Black Forest.
In Germany?
Yeah. And I had a guy rope the top of a pine tree. Oh, it was I guess about a 20-foot tree. And we bent it down and I hooked the socket to it. Tied the socket to it, and then I stuck that whip antenna in it. And we let the tree back up, see? So this guy from C Company came over and he said, hey, how'd you get that up there? I said, well, we pulled the top of the tree down and put it on and then let it back up. 2 days later he come back and he said, hey, have you got an extra antenna? I said, what's the matter? He said, well, we ain't got no antenna. They bent the tree down, put the antenna in, and turned it loose. And then they looked all over for that antenna, and they never did find it. So I went down to a German, what do you call these stations that the electric company puts up, substations? And I got a piece of heavy copper wire, and I made him an antenna that he could use. And then after the war, when the war was over with, I converted my my receiver from code to broadcast channel. We could get Radio America, you know, on it. And that was the only radio in the whole battalion that could get. Well, it wasn't Radio America; it was something else. It had three letters to it, but they broadcast news and music and stuff. Well, when I left Hawaii, then, boy, I had some experiences there too. But when that poor Jap got shot down on the street that ran next to the harbor, and no Japanese were allowed to cross that street and go to the harbor. Well, this old man started to cross, and they yelled at him to come on back, and they kept yelling. He didn't pay any attention to them. They shot him dead. Then they found out the old man was dead after they killed him. That was terrible. I had good experience there too. But I came back and I met Mama, and we went to California, and they threw me in the Army, and I went to Germany, and I drew $1.80 a month and sent all the rest of it home to Mama, and she banked it.
What was your pay, your monthly pay, you know?
I drew sergeant's pay. Well, when I first went in the Army, I got $21 a month. But then they adjusted that, and I was making a couple of $100, I guess. But I was getting overseas pay and sergeant's pay. I was making pretty good. And the Mama was working in an aircraft factory. She was running a turret drill. And she was telling me about all the drills she broken on that job. Well, when I came back, I had enough points. I had a wife and a child, and I had enough points in the Army to come home after the war was over. I had enough points, but there wasn't any outfit. Our outfit wasn't due to sail home yet, the engineers. So they transferred me to a tank destroyer outfit, which was ready to go home. See?
Yeah.
So I joined this tank destroyer outfit, and we went up above Marseille on the mesa up there.
Where's Marseille? In France?
Marseille, France. That's where I sailed from, on a Liberty ship. 2 weeks crossing the ocean. And all these jeeps and trucks and cars and everything else was just acres and acres of them. U.S. Army equipment parked up there on that hill. And we just left it there. When we came back there, automobile manufacturers over here didn't want that stuff sent back to the States at all. No, sir. They wanted it left over there. So they had enough pull in Congress to have it left over there too. But anyway, well, I got a 3-day pass to Paris. They put all our names in a hat, and they were drawing them out to see who would go to Paris. And practically everybody had gone. And I went to the old man and I said, "How come my name has never come out of that hat?" He said, "Your name isn't in that hat, brother. We need you here." That's what he told. But then he finally gave me a 3-day pass and put me in charge of the outfit that was going, so that it wouldn't go on. The 3 days wouldn't be charged against me on the record as a furlough. And we got to Paris, and they had a compound over there where all the men that were on leave were supposed to stay in this compound. So we drove in, and I was riding with the driver. We drove in, and I said, "Look, the minute we get unloaded and get those guys out of here, you turn around and get the hell out of here. We're not staying in this compound. We're just another damn army camp, that's all it is. We're not staying here." So we took the truck back downtown, parked it, and we're bumming down the street, and this Frenchman come up to us, and he didn't talk English, but I could make out enough French to know what he was. He invited us to stay with him. He had 2 beautiful daughters, and we stayed with this French dentist. And when we left, I gave him a case of K rations and a 5-gallon can of gasoline. And he told me, he said, boy, that's worth a fortune. Oh, I was going down the street. I had an army blanket to sit on in this truck. I took my army blanket with me. I had it over, pulled it over my arm. This Frenchie come up there and he tugged at the blanket and he says, combien, combien. He said, how much, how much? He wanted to buy it for the black market, see?
Yeah.
And I said, 500,000 francs. 500,000 francs. Boy, he turned loose up and took off down the street. Yeah, I told him I'd sell it for 500,000 francs. And our supply sergeant, we got a carton of cigarettes a week. So there was one package gone out of every carton. The supply sergeant had 5 those wooden damn cases that they gave us to keep our stuff in. I forget what we called them now. He had 5 of those full of cigarettes. And American cigarettes were worth $1 a pack. And boy, when he went to Paris, he was a rich man.
I bet.
And those black guys that drove the trucks over there,
Yeah.
they were supposed to bring supplies up to us in the front line.
Yeah.
Those trucks always broke down just 5 miles back. We never made, we had to send our Jeeps back to get our supplies. We never made it to the front lines. And those guys would drive into Paris with a truckload of 5-gallon cans of gasoline, and they'd sell the trucks and the gasoline and cans and everything. And then they'd go AWOL.
Yeah.
And the black market was, we paid the Russian army. Russia didn't pay their army, we paid them. After the war was over with, the Russian army hadn't been paid for 5 years, and they paid them, gave them 5 years, and they paid them with our invasion money. Our government let them use the plates that we printed our invasion money on. They let the Russians have it to print their money on. So they told them, when they paid the Russian soldiers, the Russians told them, this money is no good in Russia, spend it where you are. So they started buying everything from the GIs, and everything was $50. A shirt, a pair of pants, a pair of combat boots, a 5-gallon can of gasoline, a carton of cigarettes, everything was $50. And boy, some of these GIs were making a fortune. We had spare uniforms, and we were supposed to give to these displaced people that we got over there.
Yeah, rescued kind of.
We got them over there, and this was one lieutenant. He had 150 sets of clothing like that to give to these displaced people, and he went right by their camp and into the Russian camp and sold it over there. Now he made money too. But these GIs would get this invasion money, and they'd go to the finance officer and buy a money order, and then they'd send a money order to their family back in the States, and the family would go to the post office and cash this money order.
Yeah.
Well, the government was paying the money to cash these money orders,
Yeah.
so we paid the Russian army.
Yeah.
We paid them. And then after the war, you know, those Lend-Lease ships, we never got a dime out of them. We didn't even get our ships back.
Yeah.
And we loaned them all kinds of money during the war. We never got any of that back.
Yeah.
Now they want more money.
Where did you go when you got out of the war? Where did you live?
Okay, Mama was in Kansas City, and while I was gone, she bought an apartment house. Well, at that time, the government wouldn't let you throw people out. Well, if they didn't pay their rent, whether they paid their rent or not, you couldn't throw them out. Well, Mama got tired of that, and she sold the damn apartment house. She wasn't going to put up with that. The furnace went by bad, and she had to replace the furnace. Anyway, she got out of that. So I come back, and I went to, where was I discharged anyway? I was discharged in Kentucky. And I was all through with my discharge papers and everything else, and ready to go home on the 31st of November, on the 30th of November. And I'm punched, and I want to go home. And the guy said, no, you're going to stay here another day. And I said, I'm ready now. He said, I said you're staying another day. So they let me go on December the 1st, and then I found out why. They paid me for the month of December, because I had 1 day, and that's why he wanted me to stay over 1 day. So they gave me fare from Kentucky to Los Angeles, that's to California, because that's where I went in the Army. But I only had to go as far as Kansas City. So I made money on that. And you know that $1.80 that I drew a month over there? When I got on the boat, I had $6 in cash. And these guys were running a poker game, a stud poker game down below decks. And I went down to watch the game for a while, and I watched them playing. I said, for the love of Pete, I said, how much does it cost to get in this game? They said, well, the stacks are $2. I said, well, give me 3 stacks. They said, you don't need 3 stacks, just $2. And I said, I want 3 stacks. If I get a good hand, I want something to bet. Those guys didn't know the first thing about poker. I got off of that boat with $600. I run that, and well, I got it in cash, and the first thing I did, I run down to the purser on the boat, and I said, I'd like you to deposit this with you. And he gave me a check for it. When I left the boat, he gave me a check, and I brought it home, and I gave him a check for $600. I thought that was pretty good. But that deal over there in Hawaii, we lost a few Filipinos over there, too. We had them, we were trying to make welders out of them. And you know the lines from the welder down to the stinger?
Yeah.
We had to tie them to this catwalk that we had around there. This catwalk went up and down. There was a circular catwalk around the rim that we could do our welding off of. And when we mined it down in benches, see? So we'd have a place to stand.
Yeah.
And we mined it in the shape of a funnel, so that all the rubble would go down this 4-foot shaft and go down to the belt. Well, we made these guys, we had to clean off each one of these benches had to be cleaned off before we could get on them. So we'd start at the top and we had these Filipinos with shovels, shoveling that down.
Yeah.
And we put a life belt on them, and we put a rope from that up to this catwalk. So if they slipped, we made one mistake. We let them tie their own knots.
They didn't know how to tie knots.
And we lost a few men.
Yeah.
Then we lost 2. We lost.
You know what? We got to talk about where you lived, though. I got to go pretty soon.
Where I lived?
Yeah. Where did you live when you came back to Kansas City? What did your mom do? You got out of the war.
Oh,
came back to Kansas City.
yeah. Well.
And then where did you live from there and have your
Well,
family?
wait, when we got married in Provo, and we're living in Provo with those Mormons. Well, we had some experiences there too.
And what year did you get married?
1943. I was 37 years old, and Mama was 23 years old. I was an old man already. Boy, she should never have married me.
When did you get out of the war? What year?
1945.
And then you were in Kansas City?
Yeah, see, I've been gone for a year and a half or 2 years in the Army. We come back to Kansas City.
And where did you move from Kansas City?
Where the heck did we go from Kansas City? I guess we went to Denver.
Wyoming, maybe.
Huh?
Didn't you go to Wyoming? When did you move to Wyoming?
We went to Denver, and I applied for a job. And this job came up, they needed a mine clerk at Dines, Wyoming. Colony Coal Company needed a mine clerk. So I waited, and I went down, put in my application, and I waited about 10 days, and I finally called him up, and I said, hey, what are you doing with my application for that mine clerk? You know, I'd been experienced in mine offices, and I knew mining too, especially coal mines. So they finally said, well, we're going to send you up there. So I went ahead of Mama. I left her, and she was living in a poor darn shack that Uncle Lou put up for those Filipinos he had working on his garden. Boy, did he gyp those guys. He gave them just enough to live on. That's all he gave them.
How long were you in Wyoming?
So we were at Dines, and we worked there, and I saw the coal mine were just about over with. Old John L. Lewis was he started out getting a nickel a ton royalty for the Union on every ton that was produced.
Yeah.
And when I left, he was getting 50 cents a ton. And oil was just coming in, and oil and gas was coming in.
Yeah.
And I told Mama, I said, this isn't going to last.
How long did you stay in Wyoming?
Well, we were 4 years there at Dines, And we had made a trip up to Lander, and Mama liked it up there. I said, okay, we'll go to Lander. So we went to Lander and we bought a few acres up there for $5,000. A log cabin, a log house with a fireplace. Well, that fireplace is what sold that place. So we bought that, and then we were 4 years in Lander. So in 1954, we left Lander. Where the heck did we go from there? Denver. We went back to Denver, yeah, and we bought that house in 1954.
That's the house on Utica?
Yeah, and we stayed there till 1975. And I remember the kids were, when they went in the house, they said, didn't anybody live here before? And Mom says, no, we're the first ones. They wouldn't believe it. Kids wouldn't believe that was the first house.
You bought that new?
Yeah, brand new.
How much was it?
$12,100.
In 54?
In 54, and we left in 75. I sold it to Kit for $23,000. And by the time we paid closing expenses and everything else, and what we still owed 4 years on the house, on the mortgage. We had $1900 left, 19,000, and I had 25,000 in the bank. And when we got here, we wanted to move near Grandma Armstrong.
Yeah.
And we looked all over Missouri for a place. And we bought this place, and boy, was it run down. Oh man, it was really a crime.
It's nice now.
Yeah, well, we put this addition on. We put this addition in the garage and the back porch on, and that slab in front. And that was $7,000. And then I had this woman down here work up my income tax. Well, you see, I was making good money, and they were taking my tax off of the money, off my wages. What do we call that?
FICA. Is that retirement?
Well, I paid both. They took it ahead of time for income tax and FICA too.
Yeah.
But they figured I was going to work a full year, so they took it off at that rate.
Yeah.
Every month. They took it off at that rate, and I only worked a half year, and then I came here, and I had this woman down here work I gave her a copy of my last income tax to work it off of, and my books, and she worked it off, and I had $1,500 coming back. Well, when I went down to pay her, her old man come out and looked at me. He wouldn't believe that anybody would ever have $1,500 coming back from the IRS.
When did you buy your first car?
I bought my first car.
Yeah. And what was it?
We're in Routt County, and I bought a Model T chassis. And we bought a racing body from Sears and Roebuck and had it shipped out there.
Yeah. And how old were you?
Well, I was 14 years old. Actually, the folks bought that for us. The first money I ever earned is I fired a coal-fired boiler on a drilling rig. Papa had hired this guy to drill prospecting for coal. Instead of driving a tunnel, they'd core drills, see what was coming up. And this was steam powered, and they let me fire the boiler more to have somebody with that guy that was doing the drilling. That's actually what I was hired for. But I did fire the boiler, and I got $1 a day for that. I made 20 bucks. And then I gave the money to Mama, and I'll bet you I spent that money 6 times. I said, well, Mama, you got my $20. She said, you spent that a long time ago. Oh, no, you bought that for me. I want my money. I spent that 20 bucks 6 times.
Did you eat mastodon when you were in Alaska?
Yeah. You know, they keep talking about that mastodon that they unburied in Siberia.
Yeah.
Well, there was another one in Alaska. These guys were feeding that meat to those Eskimos. Those guys are Indians. They're not Eskimos. They were feeding it to their sled dogs. That meat. And old Pat got a hold of a chunk of it. And he brought it back and had those damn, they were Chinese cooks cook it up for us. It was dry and tasteless just like cardboard.
I bet.
Yeah. Stringy.
Pretty old meat though.
Yeah. That guy that was the head of the Alaska Guide Association, he had a picture of that mastodon.
Yeah?
Yeah, I saw that one too. And on the picture you could see where they'd been tearing meat off of it. Yeah, and then that chess set that I wanted to buy over in Hawaii, in Honolulu. See, they had this old ivory that had been buried and turned black.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they had a chess set, white ivory and black ivory. They wanted $1,500 for it. And that there, the knights were real knights sitting on horses.
Uh-huh.
And the kings were kings and the bishops were bishops. And the castles were real castles. Yeah.
Wow. Well, how old are you today?
Hmm?
How old are you?
How old was that set?
No, how old are you? Today's your birthday.
I'm 85. I was born in 1906.
Okay.
I'm 85 today. Now, if I live 2 more years, we'll have our golden wedding.
Mm-hmm. That's 50 years, right?
Yeah, and if I live, I guess I gotta live 9 more years. Yeah, kids is 91. If I live 9 more years, I'll see the new century. If I lived to 94.
From 06. What year was your dad born?
I think he was born in 1863. And Mama was born in 1872. Yeah, Aunt Ora was born over here. Mama was only 15 years old, and she had Louis when she was 16 years old. My oldest brother.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, did Dad spoil that guy.
Yeah.
They had a little pool hall there in this town of Welby where he had the garden.
Yeah.
And he'd go up there and Papa would be sitting there talking to the other guys in the pool hall, and Louis would be shooting pool. And Louis would be lining up a shot, and Papa would say, "Louis, you make that one, I'll give you $1." Well, Louis made it every time, boy. Boy, did they ruin him. He finally turned out he was an atheist.
Yeah.
He wouldn't go to church, no sir.
You spoke Italian until you were 6 years old?
Yeah.
You didn't speak any English then? You just spoke
Yeah, I spoke
fluent.
English too. I always
Okay.
tell everybody I didn't, but I spoke English too. But I spoke good Italian when I was 6 years old.
Did your parents learn how to speak English good?
Oh yeah. Especially Mama. Mama went to school over here for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, she was the smartest. She taught me my math. The schools didn't teach me my math. My mother did.
Mm-hmm.
I was graded 100 in math all the way through school.
Can you think of any other accomplishments you did?
That I did?
Yeah, or highlights of your life?
Yeah, my son had me come out to California and he took me fishing down in the Gulf of California, which the Mexicans call the Sea of Cortez.
Mm-hmm.
And Lower California is Baja California. Because every town down there is that town BC, Baja California. Yeah, I was down there. We lost, did I tell you we lost a few Filipinos down that 4-foot shaft?
Yeah, tell me that.
And we'd call them up down where the muck was coming out of the bay. We'd call them up and say, "Watch for a body."
Yeah, and they'd get them.
Oh, and among my experiences in Alaska, I don't know if I want to put this on tape or not, but it was pretty good. See,
We can always erase it.
Pat and I were up here at the mine, and that was a couple hundred miles from Cordova, railroad. And we got called for jury duty in Valdez,
Mm-hmm.
Alaska, because we were on the same railroad line down there. But the railroad line didn't run to Valdez, it ran to Cordova. So we had to stay overnight in Cordova, and then they'd put us on a plane and take us over to Valdez. And the Territory of Alaska sent me a $5 check for that. And that check was stolen off of me in Seattle on my way home.
Huh.
Somebody broke in my hotel room and stole that. I want to keep that check. But
That's about all I got time for, Daddy.
all right, that'll do it. Well, I could talk for.
Yeah,
Especially when I get talking about Alaska, I could talk all day.
we should have started this 2 days.
Okay, it's recorded. I'm gonna pack.
Okay. Pat and I are called for jury duty to go to Valdez, and so we took the railroad down to Cordova, but we were to stay there overnight and take a plane out the next morning. So while we were in Cordova, we went over to Indian Mary's. She had a beer joint. She would make this beer in a 5-gallon can one day and sell it the next. It was pretty green. But anyway, we were sitting in there drinking our beer and everything, and she had a wood heating stove in there, and she had a pile of firewood right behind the door, the entrance door outside. So Indian Mary is bent over picking up a piece of firewood, and this big Steve door comes in without knocking or anything. He throws the door open, hits Mary in the head, and she backs up against this hot stove. Well, she had this piece of firewood in her hand, so she started beating him. She really beat the hell out of him, and he ran down and told the cops, and they came up and arrested Mary. So the judge held early court the next morning because we had to catch this plane, and we all went to court, and Mary was there and the Steve door was there. He was pretty well bunged up.